We were brothers, just like Cain and Abel. Hard times come and go, so we're told.
At age 31, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Pissed me off. I wondered why, in an already arduous life, I now had to deal with finger pricks, insulins, needles, injections, hospitals, doctors, the whole 9 yards. I was working with home builders at the time, and there were days out in the field that I didn't eat enough to balance out the insulin I injected. And I found myself, for the first time in my life, having these low blood sugar attacks complete with convulsions and no control over my speech or my body. My moods went from Boy Scout to jackass at the drop of a hat, and I became very depressed. Playing music has always been a way to express myself, so I booked some time at a recording studio. While I was there, this fuzzy, light brown, 7-week-old German Shepherd mix came sniffing at my feet. She was the cutest little pup. I was in need of someone to lighten a darkened room in my heart, and she fit the bill. I named her Ahgee. I derived the name from the Cherokee word Ahgee, meaning woman. She soon became my shadow. Her curiosity for life kept me on my toes. But because of my inability to deal with my diabetes, I became an asshole. One morning, I screamed at the neighbors when Ahgee just tried to jump into their car, and I picked her up and I threw her into my Blazer. I'll never forget the look she gave me with those beautiful brown eyes of hers. It ripped a hole in my heart. But that's when I knew that I needed a break. Like music, Mother Nature has never steered me wrong, so I decided to take Ahgee on her first camping trip. We camped near Eagle, Colorado. I found an area in the Rocky Mountains where the smell of cedar and the sounds of babbling creeks really soothed my soul. Ahgee sniffed out the trails we hiked and taught herself to fish. I played my guitar by the campfire and sorted out my thoughts under the stars. It was exactly what I needed. After a week of relaxing with Mother Nature, I packed it up and we started on the road home. At sunset, we came around a corner where the mountains no longer blocked the sun. The road dipped and a flash of light blinded me. I didn't see that the road curved and I slammed into the mountainside, smashing the front end and snapping the axle. Fortunately, Ahgee and I weren't hurt, just dazed. The front doors were jammed shut. Ahgee leapt out the passenger window and I crawled out the driver's side. Now, we ended up getting towed to a junkyard miles off the main road. There happened to be a newer model Blazer on the lot that had a blown engine. My idea? Transfer engines. So I negotiated with the lot's owner, and he said he'd come back and help me the next day. That first night, even though I made the back of my Blazer as comfortable as possible, I didn't sleep. I worried all night. I'd never transferred engines before. What the fuck am I thinking? So the next morning, I got to it. Clipped a wire here, pulled a spark plug there, twisted on bolts that never turned. I screamed out every cuss word known to man. I worked tirelessly on getting those engine blocks loose with faith that someone would show up to help. But for an entire week, no one, including the guy who owned the lot, ever showed. Only thing I accomplished was getting filthy. Up to my elbows, my arms were caked with thick black oil. Ahgee had oil streaks matting her fur down. Now, we didn't have a lot of water, maybe a couple gallons, food, not much, no electricity, 0 phone service, and we really needed to bathe. On that last morning, we awoke to sounds of heavy machinery around the yard. Finally, people. I met a guy who was willing to sell me a Buick for $100. Now, it sounded too good to be true, I know, but I paid him, and we left that junkyard in a hurry. The first stop was a shower. I was so happy to be clean that I bought myself a beer and a shot. I bought Ahgee some milk bones, and we toasted to surviving a week in a junkyard before getting on the road to head home. Now, if you've traveled through Colorado, you know about highways with steep grades. It quickly became evident that my new Buick couldn't make it up a hill moving faster than 30 miles per hour, sometimes slower. And of course, I was pulled over. "Why are you driving so slow?" the officer asked. As I'm explaining to him, perhaps the smell of alcohol on my breath led him to believe that I was drinking and driving. At the police station, in handcuffs, I desperately relayed what Ahgee and I had just been through, but the cops weren't impressed. And I really didn't know how I was going to get us out of this one. Now, Ahgee was taken to her own cell for questioning, and I guess they believed her story because we were let go without even a ticket. The Buick, it died 8 miles from Pueblo. It was a hot day, I was in a terrible mood, and my blood sugars, forget about it. I stood along the median waving a please help sign for what seemed like hours until finally getting a tow to a hotel. I sold the Buick to a junker and bought a Toyota with a minor oil leak in it. On the home stretch, about 100 miles from Denton, I filled the gas tank with the last money I had. I could feel the comfort of my bed waiting for me, and I couldn't wait to get home. As we merged onto Interstate 35, thick, heavy smoke billowed from the car. Something exploded under the hood, and pieces of the engine bounced down the highway. Was I being punished for something I did in a past life? So Ahgee, she huddled on the passenger floorboard, protecting herself from the smoke, and I coasted off at the next ramp. Zombified, I drugged myself to a payphone and arranged a tow to take us the last 40 miles home. It took 8 days, 3 vehicles, and 2 tow trucks to make a 12-hour drive. After that whole ordeal, the stresses about having diabetes didn't seem daunting anymore. I mean, that whole time I managed to keep my sugars under control enough to spare me a low blood sugar attack, and the anger I had been feeling was replaced with an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The bond between Ahgee and I was unbreakable after this trip. Her ability to forgive, love, and protect comforted me on that Wizard of Oz journey. We shared many more experiences together until the day she died. No matter what mischief we found ourselves in, my partner in crime and furry barkaholic companion, Ahgee, always taught me to shake it off quickly in order to make room for all of life's exciting adventures.